The first thing I noticed that morning was the sunlight slicing through the sheer curtains, dust motes drifting lazily in the golden streaks. My silk blouse felt impossibly smooth against my skin, a stark contrast to the tight knot forming in my stomach. I was in my office, my sanctuary, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline, a coffee cup warming my hands, my phone buzzing insistently on the mahogany desk. It was a message from my father. I froze before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it didn't exist, but my thumb betrayed me, swiping to reveal the words. "Don't show your face here again. You're dead to this family." The words didn't sting the way they used to. I had memorized that pain once, replayed it in sleepless nights, let it define me. Now, sitting behind glass walls that smelled faintly of jasmine and leather, I only felt a distant echo of the hurt. I didn't argue. I didn't respond. Instead, I sipped my coffee, tasted the bitter notes of perseverance, and thought of all the mornings I had woken up alone, building a life my family couldn't see. A knock at the door broke my reverie. The past was not finished with me yet, and I realized today it would finally have to face the woman I had become. I was 17 when I first read the words that would echo in my mind for years. My bedroom was a chaotic mix of textbooks, sketch pads, and half-empty coffee mugs. My dad had stormed in, face red, hand clutching a crumpled note I hadn't even seen coming. "Don't show your face here again. You're dead to this family." The paper felt heavier than lead in my trembling hands. My mother looked away, tears glistening but silent, as if even she couldn't argue with him. My heart slammed so hard I thought the neighbors might hear it. My fingers shook, and a cold lump lodged in my throat. I wanted to scream, to beg for a second chance, to remind him that I was still his daughter. But I didn't. I folded the note neatly, placed it on my nightstand, and went to my small window, looking out at the streetlights flickering in the rain. I was utterly alone. That night, my grandmother called. She had always believed in me when no one else would. Her voice, soft and steady, carried across the phone lines. "Maddie, life will test you, but never let anyone decide your worth. Keep this." She pressed something into my hand when I visited her the next day. A small, silver locket engraved with an intricate tree. "A tree bends, Maddie, but it never breaks," she said. I felt the weight of it and somehow knew she was right. That locket became my anchor, my secret promise to myself. I decided then that I would leave the house quietly, without argument or confrontation. I would prove not to them, but to myself, that I was more than their judgment, more than a dismissed note on crumpled paper. I packed a small bag with essentials, left a simple note on my pillow for my mother, and walked out into the night. The city lights welcomed me with a strange sense of possibility, a whisper that the world was bigger than rejection, and I was capable of standing tall in it. The city was loud, cold, and indifferent, but it was mine now. I had a small studio apartment with peeling paint and a stubbornly creaky radiator, but the locket around my neck reminded me I could bend without breaking. I took on every odd job I could find, waitressing mornings, assisting in design studios by afternoon, and staying up nights sketching ideas until my eyes burned. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Ambition was the currency I paid with. It was at one of those tiny design firms, crowded with second-year interns and seasoned artists, that I met Vivian Cole, a mid-40s designer with a sharp eye and a reputation for recognizing raw talent. She watched me during a presentation, brow furrowed, and asked a simple question. "Why aren't you running your own show yet?" Her belief startled me. I had been quietly proving myself, thinking no one cared, thinking that every small victory would remain invisible. Vivian became my mentor, guiding me through business proposals, client negotiations, and the delicate art of self-promotion without arrogance. But the path was brutal. Rejection emails piled up, projects fell through, and there were nights I sat on my studio floor, the locket cold against my chest, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Self-doubt crept in, whispering that my family's verdict might be right after all. Yet every time I touched that locket, I reminded myself of my grandmother's words. "A tree bends, but it never breaks." Gradually, the tide began to turn. My first small client, a boutique brand, commissioned me for a campaign. Then another and another. The money grew, but more importantly, my confidence did too. I learned to keep my family in the dark, posting modest social media updates while my bank account swelled quietly, my studio slowly transforming into a sleek, organized workspace filled with sketches, awards, and vision boards. I savored each milestone privately. The first profitable campaign, the first recognition in a small magazine, the moment I realized I was no longer building just for survival, I was building a legacy. I felt powerful, but not boastful. I had learned that the quiet victories were sweeter than applause. By the time I hit my mid-20s, I was running a small, thriving creative firm. Success had become my secret rebellion, my silent answer to the note that once branded me dead to my family. I had become a tree that had bent under the weight of rejection, yes, but had grown taller, stronger, and unshakable. The day they came, I let them in quietly. My office, no, my world, was nothing like the cramped studio I had left behind. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of the city that shimmered like a living mosaic, sunlight bouncing off glass towers and polished brass accents. Abstract paintings lined the walls, each a collaboration from my most successful campaigns. My desk gleamed, organized, with a laptop open to analytics and designs I had poured my soul into. My father, my mother, and my younger brother stood in the doorway. Their expressions were a cocktail of expectation and pity, eyes scanning for signs of struggle, signs that I was just a girl who had failed. I let them look. Let them take in the subtle elegance of the room, the way the sunlight caught the gold details in the furniture, the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air, an echo of mornings long ago in my grandmother's house. Finally, I spoke. My voice calm, confident, every word deliberate. Surprised? I asked, letting a faint smile brush my lips. They shifted uncomfortably. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hands fidgeted at her sides. I gestured to the framed certificates on the wall. These campaigns reached audiences in over 20 countries. My firm now employs 50 people. And if you want the real numbers, I paused, letting my words land like stones in their stomachs. My company's net revenue last year exceeded $10 million. I own it entirely. Their mouths opened, but no words came. My brother's eyes widened. He whispered almost inaudibly, Is this really Maddie? I walked over to the large window, letting the sun illuminate my face. This, I said, gesturing to the office, is the life I built after you told me I was dead to this family. Every sleepless night, every rejection, every tear, I turned it into something real, something mine. My father finally spoke, voice cracking. We didn't know. I held up the locket around my neck. You didn't have to know. You wrote me off. But I didn't write myself off. I learned to bend, not break, and to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. They were stunned, speechless, and I let them sit in that silence. I let them see the power that comes from being underestimated, the grace that comes from proving yourself without gloating. Finally, my mother stepped forward, tears brimming. Maddie, I'm so sorry. We never understood. I didn't rush to forgive them. I had my life, my accomplishments, and my self-respect. I had waited for them to see it for themselves, and now they could. But the power had shifted. This was my moment, and I would decide the terms from here on. The room was thick with tension, the kind that hums in your bones when the balance of power shifts. I could feel it in the way my father's shoulders stiffened, in the uncertain glance my mother stole at me. For the first time in years, I was not the one shrinking, the one apologizing. I was the one holding the terms. I'm willing to let you back in, I said, voice steady measured, but only if certain conditions are met. I paused to let the words settle, let them grasp that this was not a negotiation, it was a boundary I had earned. First, I began, looking directly at my father. You will acknowledge the past, not just with words, but with action. No more dismissing my decisions, no more writing me off. You must attend therapy sessions or counseling. I will provide the support, but the willingness to change must be yours." My mother's eyes widened. "And me?" she asked softly. "You will stop apologizing for everything without following through," I said, keeping my gaze gentle but firm. "You will take responsibility for enabling toxic patterns and commit to being honest, rather than letting fear dictate your love." I turned to my brother. "And you, stop hiding behind others' mistakes. You have talent and potential, but you need to stand on your own and pursue it, instead of clinging to the shadow of this family drama." They flinched, but I could see the wheels turning. This was new territory for them, being held accountable by the girl they had once called dead to the family. I let them feel that weight. It was part of the lesson. Then I softened, just enough to let them know my compassion hadn't vanished. "I care about all of you. I want you in my life. But only if you are willing to grow, to break the patterns that hurt all of us. This is not revenge. It's accountability. It's love tempered with clarity." I gestured to the office around us, a physical manifestation of the life I had built alone. "I did this. Without your approval, without your guidance, without your faith. Now, if you want to be part of my world, it must be on terms that honor the woman I have become." They were silent, absorbing the conditions, absorbing the fact that I had shifted the power entirely. The air seemed lighter after that moment, charged not with resentment, but with the potential for change. For the first time in years, I felt the exhilarating clarity of being the one who decides, who bends, yes, but never breaks. Weeks passed, and slowly, change took root. My father began attending therapy sessions, hesitant at first, but gradually opening up about his past mistakes. My mother started setting boundaries for herself, learning to voice her needs without guilt. My brother enrolled in a course he had long postponed, finally stepping into his own ambitions rather than shadowing ours. I watched it all quietly, sometimes from the comfort of my office, sometimes from the balcony as the city glittered below like a field of stars. I felt pride, not the shallow kind, but the deep, steady pride that comes from knowing you survived, you grew, and you gave others the space to do the same. The silver locket rested against my heart, catching the sunlight as it always had. It had been with me through every lonely night, every setback, every small victory. I touched it now and felt the invisible thread connecting the girl who left home 17, trembling and uncertain, to the woman who had returned to face her family not with anger, but with power, clarity, and grace. One evening, as I stood in the quiet of my office, looking out at the city lights, I realized how far I had come. The pain of the past had not vanished. It had transformed, molded into strength, wisdom, and compassion. I was no longer a victim of rejection or a note that labeled me dead. I was alive, thriving, and in command of my own story. I whispered to myself, a private affirmation that carried more weight than any applause or recognition. I bend, but I do not break. I am mine entirely, and no one can take that from me. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Surviving alone had given me the power to create a family not defined by fear, but by respect, growth, and love. I had finally become the woman my younger self had promised she would be. Strong, unstoppable, and free.